Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us podcast. I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Lisa Downs.
As co-hosts of the Imperfect Us podcast, we will share relatable stories that celebrate that we are perfectly imperfect humans leading perfectly imperfect lives.
We will be sharing these stories through open and honest conversations with our extraordinary guests. And together we'll discover practical and evidence-based strategies that will enable us to navigate the constant challenges and changes of everyday life. We are thrilled to share these conversations as we draw on the science of wellbeing and positive psychology, and we uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung and Kaurna people who are the traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from other communities who are here with us today. So let's get started.
Yay! And recording.
In today's episode, we are thrilled to be speaking to Professor Craig Hassad from Monash University. In 2019, Craig was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for services in medicine. Craig teaches a number of other faculties, is coordinator of mindfulness programs across Monash, and is the founding director of education at the Monash Centre for Consciousness and Contemplative Studies. Craig's teachings, research and clinical interests include mindfulness, mind-body medicine, lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine, and medical ethics. Regularly invited to present in Australia and overseas, he has authored over 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals and has published 14 books and 16 book chapters. Craig was the founding president and patron of Meditation Australia, is a Smiling Mind ambassador and commentator featuring in the documentaries The Connection and My Year of Living Mindfully. He has co-authored 2 free mindfulness courses in collaboration with Monash University and FutureLearn, both of which are rated by Class Central as the 2 leading online mindfulness courses globally and among the top 10 online courses for any subject in the world. Everyone, please welcome Craig Hassad. Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so privileged to be talking to you today, and we'd love to hear about what led you to the work that you're doing now.
Look, I'd have to say for myself, it was a bit of a, I suppose, an intuitive thing and a kind of a self-discovery thing. I discovered what I would now call mindfulness intuitively in my teenage years, when I realised that when my mind wandered into what ifs and maybes about the future, all of a sudden started feeling anxious and, worried, and the body reacted. And I had a few moments of actually just being awake and noticing that and realising, wait a sec, my mind is creating dramas and sagas and worries out of thin air. And present moment reality could be a very nice environment, and yet I'm generating my own stress. And so I started to notice that, and I realized that I had to stay present. And from student point of view and leading up to exams in year 11 and 12, just stay with what's in front of you, because if your mind wanders off, you get into a very bad place. Just stay present, focus, moment by moment. And I used to practice cultivating a really, I suppose, calm and attentive state of mind to take into the exam room, because I realised that was far and away the best state of mind to take in, to function well and also to feel okay. So I practiced what I would now call mindfulness intuitively, because I realised that was the state of mind to cultivate. And so I guess there are other things, but for me, it was that direct experience in studying medicine and noticing that interaction between my mind and the body. I became very interested in mind-body medicine and what's now called mindfulness, and very much wanted to dedicate my career to that, because I thought it was far more important than just writing lots of scripts for patients that that they may or may not need in the first place, and ignoring the underlying issues that were going on from a mental point of view.
And mindfulness is such a wonderful prescription, isn't it? When you think about the challenges that young people experience, especially in today's day and age and the current circumstances we find ourselves in, the mind is so busy. Life is so busy, and to do that intuitively, not everyone is able to do that. So that's a great personal skill to have and to draw on.
I think the world was a simpler place, and it was easier. When I was young than it is now. There are so many more things to distract kids and to make them worry about things. Social media, their addiction to the technology and so on, that are just adding whole layers of complexity to kids' mental health and kids' distractibility. And also the pace of life, the overload, the mental overload, fear of missing out and all this sort of stuff. The kids have just taken on holus bolus, thinking that's the way you've got to be in the world and so on. And so being a young person growing up, I think, is a lot more difficult now than it was just even decades ago when I was young.
Well, you notice that at schools as well. I work in education, and we've got mainly in the primary school, but in a K-12 school, we've noticed such a shift in the last 5 to 8 years, and it's just getting worse and worse, I suppose, in a way, with their attention. So we're actually doing a lot of mindfulness in the classroom and really embedding it into every fabric throughout the day, even when they're reflecting just on what they've been learning. But what I think stood out for us is when we were, and it was one of a quote in your book actually, is to make sure that to ensure you're absolutely doing this, bring your mind in as well as your body into the classroom or into whatever it is that you're doing. And that has made a really big shift for the kids, because they go, oh, so it's not just your whole body, it's what you're thinking and feeling as well. I'm like, oh, yes. So that was really, really clever. I think that will start to make some changes.
Because the kids can get into the classroom, but their mind's still out in the playground, or their mind's at home, or the mind's on the weekend. And kids, and unless we have things drawn to our attention, it's easy not to notice that we're distracted. It's easy not even to realize what's going on. And I think part of bringing it into the classroom is both the positive skills of teaching and reinforcing mindfulness, but also to deal with the distracting environment. For the classroom, the school, at home, to get some really clear guidelines on the reasonable management of technology and distraction, and getting some kind of limits on that, so that because if it's not, then it's sort of like trying to teach mindfulness is like trying to swim upstream. It's a lot harder.
Absolutely. And we do notice that there are times when people think they have to teach mindfulness, and then they're racing around with all these other jobs, and you go, well, you're not really sharing that practice very well, because the message you're saying to the kids is, yeah, this is important. However, I've got a couple of other things to do at the same time, so therefore it's not.
That's true. What the teacher is teaching in that situation is distraction.
Yes.
Not to pay attention, and maybe even with the best will in the world, but if it's more important than what comes out of the mouth is what's modelled by the teacher. And if the teachers are modelling distraction and complex multitasking and so on, the kids will pick that up, and they'll learn that lesson very, very quickly. A lot quicker than they'll learn maths lessons and so on, but they'll learn it very quickly.
Craig, was your focus, when you first started out, was your focus mainly in the education space, or?
Well, I went into medicine as an 18-year-old because I was interested in the mind. With my own experience, intuitive experience, a few moments of being aware in my teenage years, that's where I wanted to go. And I thought I'd do medicine, not because I wanted to do medicine, because that was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. But I thought, oh, well, look, I'll do psychiatry. And that meant I had to go through medicine in the first place, because psychiatrists were meant to be interested in the mind. Unfortunately, I mean, a lot of psychiatrists are interested in the mind, but more often than not, psychiatry wasn't about the mind, it was about drugs. And I got a little bit disappointed halfway through my medical course, thinking, well, that's not what I'm interested in. And also, I wasn't interested in the very tip of the iceberg in terms of very extreme mental health problems that psychiatrists are so well trained to deal with, and their work's so important. But I was interested in the rest of the iceberg, that is the whole of humanity, dealing with the kinds of challenges and so on in terms of everyday stress and anxiety and coping and all of that kind of thing. That's what I was mainly interested in. So I kind of internally navigated my way that way, and then through general practice to counselling, and then I've been working in general practice for a couple of years and in hospitals, and the path of my career wasn't really resolved. And it's the only time in my life I've ever opened up the job section of a newspaper. But I was at home, hadn't chosen what I would do the next year or whatever, and I just sort of thought, I'm just going to have an open mind, and I'm just going to cast my attention on the job section of the paper, and I'm just going to see what presents itself. So I just have a look, and yes. And I see this job in the Department of General Practice at Monash University, so medical education. And I can remember the thought stream. It was like, academic, last thing in the world I'd ever want to do. All the things I wasn't taught at medical school, I should have been taught, about meditation and the mind, and, how to prevent illness rather than to try and treat it. All the things I wasn't taught that I should have been taught. Oh, somebody should do something about that. And then this thought goes, bang, well, do something about it. All of a sudden, what? Apply for this job? God, I'm joking. But it was another moment of being aware, and so I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Something I thought I'd never do. So I applied for the job, and so I got involved in medical education. And then to try and find a way to bring these kinds of things into the training of doctors, which we did in the early 90s. I took up the job in the late 80s, and by the early 90s, it was a part of curriculum, and then started to work with other faculties who are interested in bringing this in, because it was really helping our medical students, and then interest from outside. So schools and various places were saying, we'd need those skills as well. So it just kind of grew organically from there. And I've never had, I guess, a vision, but never a fixed plan about how all of this work would unfold. It's just like seeing where it takes me. And it's been quite an interesting journey.
It has. It is very interesting.
And I also noticed that, Harvard University picked it up as well as some of the international things. So it has spread, your leap of faith, I suppose, to begin with, about having a go, has really flourished across the globe now. Yes,
it was interesting. When I did a leadership in academic medicine course, it was being run by Harvard out here in Australia. I was invited by Monash to attend that, which I did, and so it was run by Harvard and said, I'll be over in Boston, early next year. And they said, oh, come to Boston. Oh, interesting, all the things you're talking about. Look, you should come and speak at Harvard Medical School. Oh, okay. So spoke to faculty and students there and about what we're doing at Monash. And again, this is back in the mid-90s probably about the late 90s by then. But anyway, there was a lot of interest, and so the kind of program running for our students in the early 2000s, they started running that as an elective for their students. So it was it's interesting how things happen. Certainly, when Harvard started using the sort of things we were doing at Monash, I can assure you it sort of drew the attention of quite a few people in the faculty at Monash as well, saying, oh, maybe we should take this more seriously.
Yes.
How validating for your work too.
Yeah. Oh, they're delightful people at Harvard that I crossed paths with, and just very open minds. And there were people doing this sort of work there, but it was like taking mindfulness to Boston was like taking coal to Newcastle kind of thing. But I guess being from outside of that sort of bubble, it in some ways made it a bit easier than some of the sort of very noted people that were in the neighbourhood, but not necessarily working in the medical faculty in the same kind of way that I was.
Mm. Oh, my mind's just going, oh.
Yeah, mine too.
And thank goodness that you did it, because, it has really rippled through. But I'm just wondering, and I was wondering it the whole way through you were talking, was there ever a moment that you had a self-doubt in any of that, or an inner critic saying to you, maybe you're not capable of doing this, or I don't know.
Look, I suppose when I said, the last thing I want to do is medicine, or the last thing I want to do is work in academia, and so on, that's a kind of voice, but there's a sort of a deeper calling I think we all have. There's a kind of a quieter, deeper voice, if I could put it in that way. And then there's this noisy clutter of, oh, no, I don't want to do this. No, oh, what about that? But I've tried, when I've recognized that sort of deeper, quieter inner calling, I've tried to follow that.
Yeah.
Because it's always steered me far better than the noisy sort of self-doubt, self-criticism. In saying that, it's not like, oh, well, I never have self-doubt and self-criticism, but I've found that kind of internal dialogue that can be running in our heads is not the most useful or interesting thing to be listening to. I mean, if you had a radio station called Inner Critic, would you turn on to that station? I mean, would you spend your whole day listening to it? No, and yet we kind of got this, we dial in to this sort of, inner critic station or self-doubt station in our own heads. And we spend all our day listening to that unconsciously and habitually. And when we have a conscious moment, we realize, why am I doing that? And you see, it undermines our natural ability. It undermines our confidence. It undermines our passion, our enthusiasm, our creativity. So, I've tried to practice not listening to it because, and when you follow the things you're passionate about, you're interested in, your things you feel called to do, and mostly those things as well, if they're not, it's like a sense of service. You kind of get called to do something that might be useful for people. And when this other stuff comes in, it's very ego-driven. It can be recognized by the kind of sound that it has. It's me focused. What about me? And all of these kind of negative self-talk, it's got a very me focus, whereas these moments of insight, of inspiration, of calling and so on are actually quite impartial. They're quite kind of deep, they're kind of quiet. So I suppose I'm speaking from my experience, but when I recognize it, I follow that deeper inner calling or that deeper moment of insight. And the other stuff starts up, that's fine, just not interested. Give your attention to what's in front of you, and you'll find that you have what you need to take you there.
That's funny.
We've trust.
Definitely. I was going to say, Leanne, this is probably part of why we started this podcast, is the both of us have finished our Masters of Applied Positive Psych. And we were playing in a lot of that sort of world and then noticing things about ourselves. And what we were talking about our inner critic and inner coach, or the coach that was going to help us. And I really love what you say about quietening or getting that quieter, deeper voice, because we were saying we have that says you can't do it, but we're really practicing mindfulness for ourselves about, hang on, are we listening to this one? Are we unsafe? We're actually not unsafe. So thank you. Is there some truth in that we can, adapt something that needs to be, we need to improve something perhaps, but then listening to the other voice. And we've just found it so much more enriching, and wanted to share how others are doing it, because often people think it's they're themselves by themselves and they're hopeless or they can't do something, and they think they're the only people like that. But in actual fact, it's most of us. And those people who say, no, I don't have the imposter syndrome, you go, oh, maybe you do. Maybe you need to do a bit of thinking about who you are.
I have a feeling that Inner Critic FM is on quietly in the background for a lot of people. I know it is for myself. And I think, it's really interesting as you sort of explore these things and just, practicing living in a mindful way, how much you can become aware of that self-talk. And, Craig, you're well practiced, from a very young age. You had a deep self-awareness, and I guess that I really connected to what you were saying. I that inner voice, or that
voice clutter,
the knowing, that deeper knowing. I connected to that in if it does become about ourselves, like, am I saying the right things, or I feel a bit embarrassed, or whatever it might be, I can see how the channel can change very easily. But then if you move your focus back to the point of service that you made, you're driven differently, aren't you?
Yeah, and from a mindfulness point of view, it's just pay attention moment by moment to what's in front of you. Like one of the big fears in life I had is public speaking. And so, I said, taking up that job at Monash, where you, as a lecturer, like, why would you want to do that? Full on fear, panic, it's like, why would you want to do that? Take on a job like that? And it was like, again, that kind of calling. And just consider at a moment like that, all of a sudden you feel called to do something. And then what arises in response is some kind of fear, judgments of yourself, what you can, you can't do. And there's a kind of choice that, for me, it presented as a choice. Do I dedicate my life to my calling, or do I dedicate my life to my fears? And it was that stark. And it's not like, I want to dedicate my life to my fears.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'd love. And on my tombstone at the end of my life, he was dedicated to his fears. And ever faithful to, and like this stuff. When I'm teaching mindfulness and people talk about their fears and panic and all this kind of stuff, it's not like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you've got a problem I don't have. It's like, I know what you're talking about. But the thing is, in teaching, it's once you kind of find a way to navigate through and work with your own stuff and see what works and what doesn't work and so on, then you kind of, in some sense, like helping to guide people through the same terrain, because you've been through it and you've come back and you're helping somebody through it. And so, for example, being mindful, you've got giving a lecture or speaking, I can remember one time giving a keynote at the first conference I'd ever given a keynote at. And it was all about stress and everything else. And I can remember washing the dishes the night before the conference. And I was feeling nervous and the heart was going a bit. And, and I was washing the glasses. And as I was washing the glasses, I was thinking to myself, I hope I'm in the present moment tomorrow. And I don't know if you get the irony. I had a moment of waking up and seeing what was happening. And I kind of thought, well, wait a sec, I want to be in the present moment tomorrow. Well, I'm not going to find out till tomorrow. But I know I'm not in the present moment now.
And you need to do the glass.
If I want to have a chance of being in the present moment tomorrow when it seems to count, then practice paying attention to the present moment. And that meant feel the glass in the hand, the dish mop, the water, the sound of the suds just popping. And as I engaged my attention with that, not only did the dishes start getting washed a whole lot better, but I noticed that whole stress response switched itself off. And it wasn't based on an internal dialogue I was trying to have with myself. I can do it. I will be all right. It'll go well. Everybody will love it. It was just based on being present. And that means driving to the event. Just pay attention to the driving. Get out of the car. Just pay attention to the walking. You've done the preparation you need to do, but just feel the body walking, because the mind, as soon as it's allowed to, will run off to catastrophize and panic and worry and negative self-talk and what if and maybe. So just bring it back gently, not with harshness. What's wrong with me? It's just like very gently, the attention back in the moment. Life's no more complicated than just walking now. Feel the breeze. And then paradoxically, when you get to the moment of actually speaking, the mind's in a calmer, more attentive state to then engage with what happens next. And it's not to do with having an internal dialogue about good, bad, can, can't, or anything like that. It's just about being in the moment and giving your attention to the moment based on its merits without all the internal palaver added to it.
Craig, you describe washing dishes in such a way that it's such a pleasure.
It's a lifesaver.
I also found, even when you were explaining it, I was getting calmer and more relaxed by the way you were speaking. I know that's crazy, but
here's an imposter moment for me, because I feel like I'm going to say, Craig, behind my hands, I teach mindfulness, and one of the things that I've found is I remember one participant in particular. It's an introduction to mindfulness and just teaching them about managing their emotions and their thoughts and all that sort of thing, and this gentleman, he experienced a moment of road rage, and he shared it. It was so wonderful to hear him talk about how, through this just, understanding his thoughts and emotions and sort of tapping and being present changed what, usually he would be yelling at someone and probably jumping out the car and having a bit of a go, where he actually just, took a moment to be, was present and actually thought about the person that cut him off, and maybe they're rushing to the hospital or something like that. It's that being present changes so much about the reality that we experience, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's interesting what we even call a reality. So, and from a mindfulness perspective, it's like just a change in the reference point. And this is always a really, I think, an important sign when people are really getting it, that they describe moments of road rage or getting angry with the kids or something else happening, but all of a sudden they describe it in a different way. One moment, kind of lost in it, fighting with it, wrestling, trying to control it. And when mindfulness is really starting to soak in, all of a sudden they describe it as an observer of the reaction, an observer of the emotion. And even if the usual behavior is happening, and parents saying, and I just saw myself, my arms waving around. How ridiculous. I was just looking at myself reacting like this. And that reference point changing, it's like when you're lost in a movie and you're so consumed by a horror film or something like that. And somebody sitting next to you just taps you on the back of the hand and says, it's just a movie. Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden you're standing back and you're in the audience again, not lost in the middle of the drama, but all of a sudden you're the audience again watching it. So what is there still there, if we call that the reality of it, but the reality of the reference point has changed. There's a game changer.
Love that.
And that sort of reference point changing, that no longer caught up in or attached to what's happening, but the impartial, non-judgmental observer of it, all of a sudden opens up a window of opportunity to choose. For example, not to necessarily go and do the usual behavior, or to stop waving the arms around and getting all angry with the kids, or to just change the tone of voice, or to just not act on that impulse. So all of a sudden there's that window of opportunity that opens for a conscious, rational, sane response. I often say to people, when they give examples like that, I say, you're in serious danger of becoming sane. It's like,
that's us.
I hope to be sane one day. I've got aspirations to be sane one day, but it's a work in progress. But the awareness can change everything. And it's interesting, in those moments, the activity of the mind's just under observation.
Mm.
Judgments, the reactions, the behaviour. But that stepping back changes everything.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've been really excited about, is having those thoughts and talking to each other about it. And so that we're making each other aware of different things. And then we're going, oh, I actually am feeling that as well, or I've noticed that about myself. And I think hence why we're wanting to do this podcast, to share that with others, because we hope that this will reach more people to be able to do that. Such a good strategy.
It's quite an interesting thing when running a group and somebody's describing an example of perhaps an unmindful moment, and we all have them, so an unmindful moment, and there could be all of this self-doubt or whatever it is that's running. And it's very interesting because you kind of recognize what somebody's talking about. And sometimes just voicing the kinds of thoughts, oh, I'll never cope with this, and what's everybody going to say, and if it doesn't go well, then no. And you voice these kinds of thoughts, and people look and say, yeah, are you reading my mind? And it's like, it's kind of, you sort of recognize it, but all of a sudden it just places it out there for the person to look at. And then the person starts to observe their own minds, their own thoughts, but from a different perspective. And then that starts to really change things. And all of the other things, cognitive reframing and everything else, they can all be useful. But if you've got that ability to observe from an impartial, non-attached kind of position, then it makes all of that a whole lot easier.
Yeah. And it helps you to probably make the right choice as to what to do for you at that time too, and gives you the time to have that choice, to really mull it over a little bit further and make a wise choice.
And relief, I would imagine, too.
Yeah.
So the conversation is just I guess so rich with these aha moments that sort of come up. Craig, as Lisa mentioned, our background is in positive psychology, and there are close ties between positive psychology and mindfulness that help us to get a better understanding of ourselves and others. Can you help us to understand how mindfulness helps us to tame that inner critic?
Yes, from a mindfulness perspective, it's not necessarily so much about arguing with it or trying to convince it otherwise, or putting up the case for the defense, when our minds, judged and sentenced us to a life of negativity or something. It's not sort of so much an internal debate. Sometimes people use a term like non-elaborative. There's no need to elaborate on all the thoughts. It's just a simple observing of them, that change of reference point as the simple observer of those thoughts. And that gives a little bit of level of freedom from them. The real choice from a mindfulness perspective is to what to give the attention to or not to give the attention to. Because occasionally we do have useful thoughts. Not very often, but I often say a little bit tongue-in-cheek, about every 10 or 15 years we have a useful thought, and it's really nice to be there when it happens, and that is, it's a thought worth giving attention to. It's like a train to get on because it's going where you need to go. But the vast majority of thoughts that go through the mind are either just a waste of time, and some of them are downright noxious. So mindfulness just opens up the possibility to choose which thoughts to give attention to and which ones not. And if we learn to recognize the sound of, the tenor of, the effect of, the feeling of that kind of unhelpful, repetitive, self-critical kind of stuff we've got going on in our mind so much of the time, we don't need to argue with it, not from a mindfulness perspective, or convince it otherwise. We just don't have to get interested in it. We can just leave it alone. What do we give our attention to anyway? We just give our attention to whatever needs it in that moment. And if we're walking to that public speaking event, or if you're walking towards that meeting or towards that interview, and your mind wants to do a little imposter thing on you and all that sort of stuff, well, that's fine. It's totally fine that those thoughts are there. It's just like traffic noise in the background. It's just like the sound of something else, but you can just give your attention to something else. And that is, come back come to your senses, literally, come to your senses. What that means is the feeling of the body, the sounds in the environment. Instead of listening to the internal dialogue, just come back to hear the sounds around you. To, if you're eating something, taste the food. So it's just the senses will ground our attention back in the present moment. And if we do that again and again and again and again, then it gets easier and easier to do that. But we have to be patient, and when we're practicing paying attention, it really implies that we're doing it with a kind of a gentleness, a kind of a non-judgmentality about it. Mind goes off, that's fine, bring it back. Mind, creates some sort of storm in our own head, that's totally fine. Just gently bring the attention back. So we can do it gently with a little bit of self-kindness, with a non-judgmental attitude, and even just being curious, because if we start to be more mindful, we just get, isn't that interesting how often the mind goes to that? Yeah. Isn't that interesting how often the mind, that's like a well-worn rut in the mind. Isn't that interesting? I never noticed that habit that the mind has so much. And so we do start to notice things more. We have to notice them in a kind of a gentle way if we're working mindfully.
Makes me think of, and I'm not going to get this right. Is it Lumic? I think he's a poet, and the poet goes something along the lines of, I sat on the fence with myself, and I can't remember exactly how it goes now.
That one he holds his own hand.
That's it. I remember thinking, learning about. Actually, it was at the Meditation Australia conference. Actually, and one of the presenters shared that, and it just made so much sense that we really are our own best friend or enemy, aren't we?
Oh yes, and so this sort of sense of self-kindness, this sort of sense of self-compassion, and we would want, if we're with a friend who's suffering or in some difficulty, we would naturally have a sense of kindness or compassion towards them. And yet we often forget to show the same to ourselves. We bring, sort of, a club to ourselves, and oftentimes beating ourselves up for the most insignificant issues. Yeah. And the thing is, we do make mistakes. I'm not even sure what a mistake is. I think it's just we act and maybe something doesn't turn out the way that we wanted to or expected to. There's always something to learn from a mindfulness perspective. Turn towards it, look at it, notice it, just impartially, just see what happened. And there'll often be a kind of a lesson, something to learn from that. Good. Well, that's been a very useful experience. Wasn't comfortable, wasn't easy, but I've learned something really valuable. I'm better off for it than I was before. But now move on. Don't relive it 1,000 times. The difference between reflecting on a past experience, because when we're doing that, we're doing it grounded in the present moment. That's very different to ruminating or reliving that past experience. And we'll know which is which, because when we're reliving and ruminating, we're activating the same emotions and same physiological effects that often with embellishments that happen when we got really stressed over that event. When we're doing it mindfully, it's kind of a very impartial sort of thing. Impartial not in the sense of cold, because there's a kind of compassion there, but there's a kind of impartiality here now, reflecting on a past experience. Here now, planning and preparing for a future event, which is different to worrying about a future event.
Yeah.
And worry gets so much attention in our own heads. It gets so much attention because it does impersonations. Worry impersonates things. It pretends to be planning and preparation when it's actually just worry pretending to be useful. And because we, it's kind of, oh yeah, but what about this? Oh, and if I thought about that? Oh, and this, and well, let's go. Well, and what if it doesn't? Oh no, maybe. And it's actually just worry pretending to be useful. Because when people are actually really in the present moment planning and preparing, they're feeling productive, they're getting stuff done, and they're using their time well. But that doesn't happen with worry when it's doing impersonations of things like planning and preparation, or rumination, pretending to be working myself out. it's actually rumination. But the mind, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? And we'll know by the negativity, the weight on our shoulders, that we're actually ruminating, learning or understanding ourselves better, because that only comes through that sort of impartial, objective, not dressing it up, not criticizing, just looking impartially at what happened, our reaction, our behavior, what happened, learn something from it. But that's but this rumination, this default mental activity gets way too much attention.
Yeah, it's such a barrier, isn't it? And to any action forward, where when we're present, we're actually having more opportunities for growth and for more learning.
Every moment.
Yeah.
I just so connect. It was like a penny drop moment for me when you talked about worry pretending to be useful. I really like that.
Yeah, I know.
No, I just really like that. That just makes sense, doesn't it?
I was having a conversation with Matthew Ricard recently, who's one of the most remarkable people on the planet, I think. It's a great honour to have a conversation with him. But he was talking about, if you're in a marketplace and there's a pickpocket there, and these kinds of internal, negativity and so on, these sorts of things are like pickpockets. And but the thing is, if you can't recognize the pickpocket, then picks your pocket and you don't even know you've been robbed. But as soon as you see it, as soon as you recognize the pickpocket, then you're safer. And in a kind of a way, we have to learn to recognize these things, because we have to learn to see them and to recognize them. And if we pick up those sort of hallmarks of what worry feels like and what rumination feels like, we start to become more mindful. Oh, that's what that feels like. Oh, that was the effect of that. Oh, that's the effect it had on my behavior. So people start to recognize it better. And then they can make their own choice about, do I really want to keep giving my attention to that? Do I want to go down that path? No, don't need to do that. And that's the kind of game changer that comes with awareness.
And thank goodness we have that as a tool. It's I've noticed to be changing myself, and I know Leanne and I have been talking a lot about it, and it really does help. And I think the more we're practicing it, the more we're realizing and being aware of who we are and who we're becoming, and the choices are so much easier for us. And I can pick up mine straight away now, and I just go, where did that come from? And then go, well, actually, no, it's not. It's just such a beautiful thing. And I was explaining, we spoke to Michelle McQuaid the other day, and I was explaining to her how I felt, which I think that's what you're saying, and please share if I'm wrong, that reference point. I just said to her, I felt like I was outside my body, higher up, just looking at what I was doing. Is that what how you is that referencing point? Changing that reference point?
There's sort of the sense of the observer of what's happening.
Yeah.
Like being the audience of the play or the audience of the movie. Because when we're sort of lost by it, all the stuff, the light, the sound, everything's happening, but we feel consumed by it, caught up in it, identified by it, and all the emotions that come with that. And the reference, what's there is there, but the reference point changes.
There we go back, yeah.
You're the observer of it. And when people sort of describe in these kinds of moments that all of a sudden, oh, I was just kind of observing myself. And I think what's meant by myself is the usual behavior, the habitual pattern of thinking, just observing the reaction. And when it's got that impartial observing kind of attitude to it, things are changing. And the person, it's not, and you see the sort of the idea, well, how should I be in this moment? Doesn't come from somewhere else. It's not like, oh, I should be like this, or somebody says I should act like that. The person themselves makes a conscious decision in that moment for themselves, how they want to or how they need to be.
Yeah.
And so it opens up a whole new array of possibilities. But it's like the person almost feels like, I was just watching myself. I was just observing myself.
That's exactly how I felt. And it was such a weird thing, but I was also really grateful for it, because I went, oh, I am changing. And it was, and I was really proud of myself because I thought, oh, you know, back then when the imposter was very strong, I didn't think I could. And I knew all of the science and I'd read about it and I did all these activities and I thought, am I getting closer and closer? And when this happened, I was like, oh, I'm finally, even though I've still got a long way to go, I can actually know that what I'm practicing is making a difference.
Yes. And you see, if people, you know, the cornerstone of developing this ability is the mindfulness meditation.
Yeah.
But mindfulness is not just meditation. It's what we take into our day-to-day life.
Yes.
You know, these moments when it's all happening, acting with awareness as opposed to habitual condition, pattern kind of thinking, etc. And people will often say, oh, I'm not getting far with my mindfulness because, you know, the meditation, the mind goes off, come back, get irritated, practice acceptance, you know, get very judgmental, practice self-compassion, you know, mind goes off again, come back. And the person thinks, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not getting it, I should be in a bubble of bliss, I should, you know, a shaft of light coming from the heavens, you know, and I'm not getting that. And it's like, no, great, you're practicing the practice. And but tell me about your life. Tell me about, and when a person says, oh, the other day, there I was in the operating theatre. Normally, if I get the wrong instrument when I ask for something and I get given the wrong instrument, I get angry and I slap it down and, you know, and all of a sudden it's very tense everywhere. And the other day, operating theatre, and I got given the wrong instrument and I just looked, oh no, I'll need the such and such, and just placed it down gently. But I noticed the usual reaction, but I just didn't need to go there. I just didn't need to do that. Just placed it down, and the person says, that was very unlike me. And what they're talking about is me, is this bundle of habits and conditioned thoughts. And all of a sudden there's this conscious choice in the moment. And, you know, when somebody says something like that, it's working. Regardless, and I'm giving an example of somebody because they were describing how they weren't getting far with the meditation. They were doing it regularly, but didn't feel like they're successful. But I said, tell me about your life. And when they just start to describe things like that, you're getting it. It's working. It's operating.
Oh, that's so good. I love that example.
That is fantastic. And I think, you know, when people do, you know, start to, I guess, bring mindfulness into their lives, sometimes you can feel like, you know, it's not working. I'm doing this, but, you know, it's not working, or, you know, I can't do it. You know, every time I notice that my mind's getting busy, it's, you know, it's happening all the time. And I say, that's good. That's good that you're noticing it, because that there in that is the mindfulness. But I think, you know, when you're starting to learn, it can be, I don't know if confronting is the right word, but just interesting to see how busy our minds can be.
Yeah. People often misinterpret progress as an inability to do it. If a person comes back on, you know, second week of a course, third week of a course, for example, and says, my mind's all over the shop, you know, and like more than I'd noticed before, the person's thinking, oh, mindfulness is not working. No, it's working. You're noticing what you weren't noticing before. But it's not necessarily a comfortable thing to notice.
Yes.
And so that's where the guidance of the gentleness with which a person notices, they're not judging it, and, you know, really reinforcing, because the awareness comes before the attitude shift comes. The awareness, the attention, before that accepting non-judgmental attitude sort of goes deep. And so there's often this sort of uncomfortable period early on of irritation and frustration, when the noticing is a sign that it's operating. It's a sign that the person's seeing more of what they weren't noticing before, noticing more of the effects of their behavior and reactions, etc. And it's not always nice, but if the person can see it in a kind of a curious, non-judgmental way, then it makes it easier for that awareness to grow.
I remember when I first did a mindfulness meditation in a group, and it was the very first one that I had done. And I remember that beautiful woman, she was sort of saying, just be mindful, be gentle, be non-judgmental. And it was the very, very first time that I'd actually been noticing my thoughts. I was horrified how many there were. Like, I literally, because I wasn't aware of them at all. I knew they were there, but I didn't know how many. And then eventually she said, it was so beautiful. She said, just let them go like clouds in the sky. Just look at them. And honestly, if I had have painted a picture of the first time, I would have had a lot of clouds in the sky. But eventually, throughout that first session, they just floated by and they dropped off, and I could see more blue sky. And I just remember thinking, what a beautiful way to do that. But if you're not ready for it, it could be quite scary. I mean, I had a giggle because I just thought maybe my mind had way more than anybody else's. It's just bizarre.
Probably not.
No, I know, but at the time it was all about me. So it was all like, what am I doing? And then I thought, far out, there's so many things coming in and out. I've got to put the washing in, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to phone mum, how is mum? Like just this consistent amount of clouds. It's crazy.
Yeah, it can be exhausting to notice all of this stuff, and we don't realize that this is kind of going on in the background pretty much all the time. We wonder, why am I tired, and why am I stressed, and why am I irritable, and so on. And it's like going into a dark room. Well, mindfulness is like turning up the dimmer switch, and all of a sudden we see the state of the room, and it's like, whoa, how did it get like that? It's like, what's all this rubbish sitting over in the corner there? What did I put that out? And where did that come from? And but the awareness, we don't necessarily like what we see, but it gives us the opportunity to start putting things in a little bit more order. Throw out the stuff you don't need, and put things back, where they ought to be. And so it kind of gives us the opportunity to do that. But it's very revealing. It is like, I think light is a very good metaphor for mindfulness. Purely turning on the lights, and then we can start to use our insight and rationality and so on to sort of understand what we're seeing.
Makes so much sense. And you're just dropping, the pennies are dropping all around me, Craig.
Lots of moments of gold for sure.
Because I think it's the way you're putting it, I think, is just makes it simple, makes it relatable for people to understand. Turning up the dimmer switch. I just think about how often we are in the dark, and how it can be scary in the dark. And when you turn that light on, you just see it all, don't you?
That's right.
That can be scary too.
It's and there is a kind of a fear of the dark. This sort of state of unawareness creates a kind of fear and an anxiety about all sorts of things. But with the awareness, as it increases, those kinds of things dissolve. We actually see what's going bump in the night, etc. We start to understand things better, and that has a very, very deeply consoling kind of effect. And the surprising thing is that we are okay. The mind might constantly tell us that we're not, but underneath all that, we are actually okay. And we have little opportunities from time to time where we actually discover that is the case. It's not wishful thinking, it is the case. But that sort of sense of well-being tends to get totally covered and immersed and buried in amongst all this other dross and thinking and rumination and overthinking, etc., that the mind's so often caught in.
So many strategies to bank away too for when you're really busy, thinking, oh, hang on, I'm in that phase where I'm not dealing with things. I really need to get that mindfulness back out. And it should be every day and interwoven. That's what we do at school, particularly different ways. I know your courses too, Craig, they're fantastic. I've done 2 of those. And so I don't know whether you wanted to share that as well. Are they still going, the Monash with is it Future Learn? Future Learn.
Yes, those courses are there on Future Learn. So there are 2 courses. The one to do first is Mindfulness for Wellbeing and Peak Performance.
Yeah.
And that'll teach everyone the basics of mindfulness and how to apply it in life. And the second one is Maintaining a Mindful Life. And that sort of takes a deeper dive into some of the more challenging and complex issues and how to work with those. So start with the first course first, Mindfulness for Wellbeing and Peak Performance, and then move on to the other course. And so those courses would be an excellent introduction to mindfulness, and you can go at your own pace.
Yeah, I've done the first one. I haven't done the second one, so I might have to explore that one.
Yeah, and they're really, really great. And I really like the connection with people around the globe as well. I thought that was lovely.
Right.
Well, so Craig, I'm just wondering, besides your own work, do you have a book, TED Talk or podcast or words of wisdom that you might find useful for our listeners today?
Oh, look, there is so much out there now that wasn't there when certainly I started working in this sort of space. So there's many good resources out there now. Apps, for example, can be a bit hit and miss. The Smiling Mind app is one of the highest ranked mindfulness apps in the world, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them, and Smiling Mind is right up in the top 2 or 3 by independent ranking. So that's a wonderful resource to use as well. But look, there's plenty out there. But I think too, it depends on what you're interested in as well. If you want something more with a psychological bent, the Richard Davidson's work is wonderful, a researcher, but also excellent practitioner of mindfulness, and the Healthy Minds programs that they run through the University of Wisconsin are tremendous as well. So Richard Davidson, Amishi Jar's work, JHA. And she's got a new book on attention, which is really excellent. So that's well worth having a look at. But if you want something with, more philosophical, perhaps, spiritual sort of bent to it, then somebody like Matthew Ricard I mentioned before, a lot of great insights that he shares as a wonderful teacher as well. So, but look, there's an abundance of riches out there these days.
We'll put those in the show notes for sure, and probably put in a few of your books as well, because you've published quite a few that are very, very helpful for school teachers, particularly the one that I've got that's Mindful Learning, but you have many, many others. So we'll put those in the show notes too.
Yeah. Just on that, Craig, if people wanted to get in contact with you or find out more about you, where's the best place for them to go to find out more?
Well, Monash University is home base, as it were, and so we're just getting up and running the Monash Centre for Consciousness and Contemplative Studies.
Oh, wow.
So that's a new centre being founded at Monash.
Wow. I'm
the Director of Education. Professor Jakob Howie is the Director of Research there and the overall Director of the Centre. So keep your eye on that, and there's I think there'll be lots of good things coming out of that in the future as well. Monash Centre for Consciousness and Contemplative Studies.
Lovely. Well, I guess as we come to a close, Craig, we would love to ask you if you could share a useful self-care strategy that you're drawing on in your wellbeing toolkit at the moment, that we might be able to share with the listeners today.
Yes, well, I suppose just we've been speaking about mindfulness, and there's the meditation and so on. One of the ways of applying mindfulness in day-to-day life that I find a lifesaver again and again, because you were mentioning before the sort of fast-paced life and people very busy, so many things on the plate. And I know exactly how that feels. And I find it enormously helpful, even though through the course of a day I might have 1,000 things I need to get to. At any given moment, there's only one thing, one job, one moment at a time. So whatever's priority one, just give your attention to that. And the mind will want to go on with, but I've got another 999 things to do. They're not relevant now. The only thing that's relevant now is this one job. It's like you feel like you're running a marathon, and if you think, I've got 42,000 steps to take, no, you only have one step to take. Just one step at a time. And if we do that, run a marathon, as it were, one step at a time, or move through our day, just one job, one moment at a time, then we can be surprised how achievable things are, and without so much of the energy being wasted in this sort of nervous tension and apprehension that we're often carrying around. So just one job, one step, one moment at a time.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to do that straight away.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I feel like we could just talk to you for hours on end, just picking your brain and learning from you. It's just been so enriching. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, Leanne and Lisa.
It has been a pleasure. So thank you. And we'll have to get you back to tell us a little bit more about your new centre, maybe in season 2, and find out what is happening over there.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it.
Thank you. I'm not, that was just.
Can I just say, can we do a debrief on him straight away?
Yes, can we? Yeah.
I can't tell you how calm and relaxed I feel speaking with him from the minute he started talking. What an amazing human he is. And how profound that he actually do that intuitively. That was a story that is going to resonate for me for such a long time. He knew, and he was noticing about what was happening when he was a teenager, really, at school, and going through, and that was before people were talking really about mindfulness and mindfulness practice. And he was able to really notice who he was, what was happening in his body, but also in his mind, and integrating that. And then that led him to wanting to be able to go into some sort of medicine where he wanted to help and support others in being able to not fix, problems as such with medicine and so forth, but really to teach them about what's happening inside their minds and their bodies. Like, that was phenomenal.
And it just, Inner Critic FM.
Love it. The radio station to turn it down and switch over to a different channel. I love that. But also, how good was that with the choice?
Yes.
When you can hear the inner critic saying those things, but you don't have to give it anything. You can just let that go. It's just a voice.
Yeah.
And you can make a choice to either have the fear of the inner critic, which then makes it inactive, or you can shift that to a much better option of a learning opportunity and growth. And then you're leaning more towards what he says is of service. And I
makes so much sense.
Purpose. Yeah, it's your purpose. What are you aligning to?
Yeah.
Amazing.
When he talked to, I was relating to what he was sharing around, I have a presentation to do and I hope I'm present tomorrow for that. And
whilst he was doing the dishes.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm not being present.
But it's kind of funny, isn't it, when you think about it, because we can all relate to that. I know I can. I'm a work in progress, but when you have that moment of realizing, actually, I'm not being present at all here.
That was a good wake-up call, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And hence why he talked about that self strategy at the end, also about one thing at a time. And that's that real presence part and peace. So I think that's something I'm going to practice. But how is the noisy clutter? So when we're talking about that imposter syndrome, that voice, that inner critic, I love that, because it is a noisy clutter.
Yeah.
It is just a waste of time sometimes. Although we need it at times when it's there for us to think about, is it a risky decision that we're having? But it's that noisy clutter that is often a waste of time.
Very distracting.
Correct. But then changing that to listening to I love this, the quieter, deeper voice that's actually saying to you, but hang on a moment, this is important to you. This is aligned with your purpose. This is aligned with, your inner service to something else. I just loved that. It was such a great episode.
Thinking about that whole, going with my own thoughts when I notice, oh, do I look all right? Do I sound all right? Whatever. And then just getting present with why you're here. Well, I'm here to give a presentation. I'm here to do a podcast. I'm here to, be a wife, whatever I'm there for. All of a sudden, it just, that busyness, the clarity of that busyness, if that makes sense, is really highlighted, isn't it?
Yeah. And it slows down. That's what I noticed. Once you start noticing, it slows down.
I really liked his turning up the dimmer switch.
And the dimmer switch being to look at all those things that are in your mind that are going through there. The more you see, the more you can actually start to notice and go, okay, what am I going to do with those thoughts? There's that choice. But what about the worry one?
Worry pretending to be useful.
Yeah, well, it's actually really not useful at all. But maybe there's one piece of truth in there. But, don't spend all that time with worry, because we don't really love worry. We need to befriend worry in some sort of way.
Worry's a lot of work, actually. one of those relationships that is a lot of work.
It's time to say goodbye. We love you, worry, sometimes, but not really. So we just say goodbye. Oh yeah. Well, how about we put all those things into the show notes for everybody, and we hope that you got a lot out of today, because I know we certainly did.
Absolutely.
Right. Bye for now. And thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful for our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together, and the incredible music throughout the show.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about, and we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. If you know someone who has a great story to share about how to live with imposter thoughts, then please get in touch with us. To find out more about Leanne and Lisa, we welcome you to connect with us on LinkedIn and our socials. Bye for now.
Bye for now.